Hey guys, Lance Danger here. I just wanted to make a brief, or at least as brief as I can, video just to kind of talk about the NBA real quick. Another season has come and gone for my team, the Miami Heat. And no, I wasn't a fan of the Miami Heat because of the Big Three era. I was a fan of the Miami Heat of the Alonzo Mourning era. So pretty much when Pat Riley took over the Miami Heat after he left the New York Knicks, that's when I started to follow Miami because when I first was introduced to the NBA, I was a Knicks fan because I pretty much follow all the New York teams almost by default. Um, but I kind of wasn't liking the Knicks team because at that time I thought they were kind of like bullies. I wasn't liking them in the same sense I wasn't liking the Detroit Pistons. Like I felt that they were borderline, if not just over the line, dirty sometimes in their plays, like the not Boston, the Detroit Pistons were back in the Bad Boys days of the late 80s and early 90s and what have you. So I didn't have like a generally favorable opinion of the New York Knicks back then. Like it was a gradual thing. Like I was excited about a New York team, Madison Square Garden, of course. I was familiar with it because of WWE and the circus when I was a kid, back when Ringley Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus would do tours around the country. And I actually went to Madison Square Garden as a kid to one of those circus performances. It was really cool, actually. But I digress. This is about basketball, not clowns and such, even though sometimes they are kind of interchangeable. Anyway, I wasn't a big fan of the New York Knicks. I wasn't a big fan of the Chicago Bulls era, to be honest. Like, I started to appreciate it more, I guess, in the second three-peat. But I was kind of losing interest in basketball until Pat Riley left New York. And for those who don't know, Pat Riley, legendary coach, was the big coach of championship Lakers teams in the 80s during the Magic Johnson era. Went over to New York to, I guess he got like a better offer from New York at the time, if I'm not mistaken. Like, it was around that time that I started watching basketball when he had already pretty much left LA to start coaching the Knicks and whatnot. So I'm not so sure about that part of the history. But I am sure of the history of Pat Riley with the Knicks because, again, I followed the Knicks more in that time. And I actually started to like Indiana more just because of Reggie Miller's swagger and just like unfaltering confidence and that willingness to be the hero or the villain at the end of the game. When the game was on the line, I always thought that was admirable and very cool that he had that confidence that he's going to make that shot, and if he doesn't, then he's just going to have to live with it and then, try to make the next one, which I always thought was a pretty cool attitude. Pat Riley went on to New York from the Lakers, a successful Lakers team, and then he um, eventually wanted more power within the organization of the New York Knicks. When his contract was about up, he was trying to negotiate his new contract, and he also wanted to be the general manager of the New York Knicks and have more power and what have you. And the organization pretty much said no. They didn't want to give Pat Riley that power, so Miami came and offered him to be the president, GM, and the coach of the Miami Heat. So he just went ahead and took that power and that money. He got that purse for going to the Miami Heat. And he slowly started to put together these pieces. First was Alonzo Mourning, then along came Tim Hardaway, Dan Marley, PJ Brown, you name it. He was able to assemble a pretty good team, a pretty solid team down there in Miami. The Heat make the playoff. Of course, their the reward for making their first playoff appearance under Pat Riley was to face that second three-peat Miami Chicago Bulls team, if I'm not mistaken. You know, what a great prize. And then, of course, Miami would face the Bulls quite a bit in the playoffs. They would face the Knicks in classic wars in the playoffs. One of the most physical and one of the most brutal playoff series that I've seen ever has been the Heat and the Knicks going at it like a Rocky movie or something. So I have been a Miami Heat fan for a long time. You know, we're talking about maybe around 96, I think it was, the 95 96 season when Jordan, the year after Jordan, the season after Jordan had come back from playing baseball and whatnot. So I've seen a lot of adorations of the Miami Heat, and I've been through the ups and downs with them. Alonzo Mourning going through the kidney transplant ordeal, seeing him leave to New Jersey at one point. But luckily, he returned to the Heat just in time to win his first championship with that 2006 Miami Heat team, which turned out to be like his last regular season with the Heat because the following season he had that career ending knee injury. So it was good to see him finally win that first championship. And, you know, just to kind of give context to talking about the Miami Heat and why they're my favorite team and why they became my favorite team was pretty much that. It's just a team that really doesn't have quit in them. And I absolutely love that about them. Like, this season, they went through many ups and downs because they went through a lot of injuries. They went through injuries with pretty much all their main players, you know, from Bam Adebayo to Jimmy Butler, Victor Oladipo, you know, came like into the second half of the season, more or less, finally to play with the Heat again after having another surgery from after he re-injured himself last season. Tyler Hero, he had a big bounce back year as well after really underperforming last season compared to his rookie season, to the tune of being the sixth man of the year, you know, which is nothing to sniff at. So Miami is a pretty solid team. They are a championship caliber team, as they are right now, but they kind of need that one piece that's missing to be at that level to overcome the hump to win the championship because, of course, they missed the playoffs in 2019. Then in 2020, they had that incredible run in the playoffs in what's called the playoff bubbles. If you don't know what that is, it's the when the pandemic happened at the height of it and the lockdowns happened, the NBA season was indefinitely suspended. And then they made a workaround to finish off the season and to have the playoffs. And that's when the whole play in tournament also um, really started as well, which it gives the opportunity for teams that ranked ninth and 10th in the Eastern and Western Conference to have one final shot to be in the final eight of the playoffs. Miami had an unlikely run in those bubbles, and it's called a bubble because it was done in Disney World. The outside world was pretty much excluded from it. There were no fans in the stands. There were just like digital avatars at one point, you know, to kind of have that feeling that there were fans there. There were no, in the beginning, there was no family or anything like that. It was just straight up all the teams that made it to the playoffs and that were qualifying for the play-ins, all the players, staff, big wigs of the organizations were the ones that were in that facility. They couldn't go out of the facility. They only had to have things brought to them there. They had like a very strict COVID policy at the time um, in there. Like they were pretty much sealed in a bubble, so that's why it's called the playoff bubbles. And there was no home court advantage at all. It was almost like playing street ball or something like that. And to be honest, it was one of the most fun playoff runs I've ever watched. It was definitely one of the most fun playoff runs I've seen in years, and not just because Miami did that unlikely run to the championship series, but because overall the games were just so intense and it just felt great. The level of intensity and competition in those playoff bubbles, I think, really ignited again like a big passion in the NBA and whatnot. And of course, seeing the Miami Heat make it to the finals also helped. You know, that didn't hurt at all. For as much as people want to discount that season because it was under these circumstances, the Lakers ring is a fake ring, the Heat's run was a fake run, blah, blah, blah. They were still competing, they were still putting their all to reach the ultimate goal, which is to win a championship. You know, I say screw it. I enjoyed it. I'm not a Lakers fan, and even I was excited when the Lakers won because, of course, you know, it was a charged season because not only because of the pandemic, but of course the unfortunate passing away of Kobe Bryant, his daughter Gigi, and the other passengers that unfortunately perished in that helicopter crash. So it was a very charged season, not just for the Lakers, but for the NBA and the sports world in general. It was just a tragic, tragic loss. So essentially, the Heat were called a fluke to make it as far as they did because of the circumstances. And then it didn't help when they were swept in the first round last season by the Milwaukee Bucks, who eventually became the champions. But I did notice something, which is something that other people were mentioning also, that all the teams that made it far in the playoffs in the bubble season were the ones that were knocked out first the following season because there wasn't much of a resting period between the finals and the start of the new season, since there was a long hiatus in that season because of the pandemic. So I did notice that when the Heat were playing the Bucks, they were playing like they were on their tanks were on empty from the from the first jump ball, from the first tip. They looked like they were already exhausted. So not to make excuses, Bucks of course a great team, eventually became the champions. Giannis, great player, generational player. Chris Middleton was a fantastic second voice behind Giannis. That was a really solid team that made it to the finals and eventually won against the Phoenix Suns. Then comes this season, and of course, the Heat signed PJ Tucker from the Milwaukee Bucks, so that definitely added more toughness to them, especially after Jay Crowder left Miami to go to Phoenix. Chris Tucker provided toughness and the 3 point shooting that they missed from Jay Crowder from last season. They were able to do a sign and trade to get Kyle Lowry to join the team as well. Like, that's two players already with championship experience and recent championship experience as well. So that was actually very cool. Even though, of course, Lowry was hindered by injuries and whatnot, still that would provide a great voice for the Heat team in the locker room and whatnot, having that championship experience. Jimmy Butler was at the top of his form again. Tyler Hero, like I said previously, he bounced back from a very mediocre season last season. They signed great talent like Max Strus and Caleb Martin. And Duncan Robinson still kind of had his ups and downs, but he's always going to be a dangerous shooter as well. Bam Adebayo probably had his best defensive season this season. All around, it was a great Miami team, and they proved that it wasn't just the fluke that they made it to the bubble finals, as they call it, and they made it to the Eastern Conference Finals to a Game 7 against the very gritty Boston Celtics team, who they say were on their revenge tour since they knocked out the Nets, they knocked out the Bucks, and now they finally knocked out the Heat as well in the seventh game. And I am not ashamed of this Heat team at all. They really played hard despite all the ups and downs, despite all the injuries. Top of the conference in a very stacked Eastern Conference, the most stacked Eastern Conference that I can remember. To be honest, the East is not as easy as it was before. Pretty much anyone from the East could come out at any moment, with teams like Philadelphia with Embiid and Harden now. The Nets, of course, with Kyrie and KD, if they ever if they ever play together, you know, at the same time. The aforementioned Boston Celtics, the Bucks. It's debatable if they actually would have made it to the finals if Chris Middleton had not been injured. Like, that was a great series between the Bucks and the Celtics. It could have gone either way. Again, you can make an argument that the Bucks could have won um, that series without Chris Middleton. But then again, Al Horford, what a story he's been for the Boston Celtics. Yes, coming in, the veteran, another chance in Boston. It's like he got his second win in his career. He almost single-handedly eliminated the New Jersey Nets. He didn't back down from the Bucks or the Heat. He's I dare say that Al Horford has been the most important piece of the puzzle for the Celtics' success in the playoffs right now. Especially because the Celtics have had their fair share of injured stars as well. Like Marcus Smart has been injured, Williams has been injured as well. So Al Horford has been doing a lot, for his age and the longevity he's had in the NBA. And this is going to be his first finals ever, which is mind blowing. A player of that caliber who's always been a very solid kind of role player in a sense. Kind of like that nice third, fourth option that you can rely on. He's like Mr. Reliable in that sense. Or so that's how I've always kind of seen him. Like, he's the type of player that I wish Miami could also have. You don't like them on the other team, but you want him to be on your team, is what I'm saying. So I'm very happy with how the Heat did this season. Hopefully next season they'll do better. The one thing that the Heat are missing is a consistent second voice behind Jimmy Butler. Not necessarily a star or a superstar, like some people are saying. Apparently, Joel Embiid himself said that Jimmy Butler needs another star to help it in Miami. Not gonna lie, I wouldn't mind if Joel Embiid somehow ends up in Miami too. You know, I don't know if they necessarily need another star, but they do need other players to step up, like a Bam Adebayo, like a Tyler Hero, like a Duncan Robinson. They need to step up more, especially like in the big games. And it's not like a player like Bam Adebayo doesn't have that kind of talent. In that bubble playoffs, he certainly showed that talent when he went head to head with Joel Embiid in that series against the Philadelphia 76ers, and also when he went head to head with Giannis Antetokounmpo against the Bucks. And then he had a solid series against the Celtics and had one of the all-time greatest defensive plays in playoff histories when he blocked Jason Tatum's dunk attempt to try and win the game at the buzzer. He has that potential, and with the backs against the wall, he exploded for a 31-point game against the Celtics in Boston. So he has that potential. And I know a lot of Heat fans and a lot of fans of NBA in general were kind of disappointed that he didn't win Defensive Player of the Year. I get it. To be honest, I'm a Heat fan, but I get it. He's not very consistent. He missed quite a few games also due to injury, so I don't know if he even would have qualified to be in the running for Defensive Player of the Year. But he is inconsistent even when he's healthy. Hopefully, these experiences of the last 3 seasons helps him build up his career for the following season. Or I say yes, like contact Alonzo Mourning and have him train Adebayo like in the off season or something like that, you know. Or maybe get pointers from Olajuwon like LeBron James did in Miami as well after he lost that finals against the Dallas Mavericks. You know, he has to develop that consistency on a game by game basis, especially in the playoffs. The same with Tyler Hero, outstanding regular season, again, sixth man of the year award. And he kind of faltered in the playoffs, and then he got injured too, which was very unfortunate for Miami. That Hero got injured, and when he came back for Game 7, he clearly wasn't really ready to come back. You know, that's just like the spirit of competition that he came back, I think. So it's going to be a lot of interesting questions from here on out. Like, what's Bo's future going to be, Coach Eric Spoelstra? I really like Coach Eric Spoelstra, to be honest. In the beginning, I also was kind of wondering uh, how much of his coaching was influencing the team, and how much was it Pat Riley being in his ear, how much was it LeBron James being in his ear, since it was his first tenure as coach back when the Big Three era literally started with LeBron James, Chris Bosh, and Dwayne Wade. What a coaching gig to have for your first year as coach, to have LeBron James, Chris Bosh, and Dwayne Wade on your team. That is crazy. And then eventually Ray Allen joining in as well. So yeah, I was one of, I wouldn't say a doubter, because you still have to be a good coach to be able to contain all those egos. I mean, just ask Phil Jackson, Pat Riley himself as well. So he must have been doing something right as well. Although I don't know if the rumors are true that at some points LeBron James wanted Spoelstra out, but that's something that follows him in every franchise, that he has kind of a say in the coaching staff and whatnot. To Pat Riley's credit, if that was true, like he was the only GM that didn't buckle to those demands of the coach getting fired, you know, so hats off to him for that. Because Spolstra has proven to be a terrific coach. Is my cat saying hi again? Eric Spolstra has proven to be at least to me, in my opinion, a great coach. And one of those few coaches where the players don't give up on him. You know, they go to war for him. There are seasons where the Heat, after the Big Three era, could have just tanked the season because of the losing streaks that they were in, especially out the gates. But then they would turn things around middle of the season, towards the end of the season, and they would always either just barely make the playoffs or just barely miss the playoffs. And that's a sign of a great coach, that their players don't give up on him, that the organization doesn't give up on him, and that they show that fight, that they're willing to fight to the end of the season, you know, come what may, and build upon that. So hopefully the Heat will be able to build upon this latest playoffs experience. Hopefully Jimmy Butler will get some more help out there. He once again this season, he proved the bubble was not a fluke. He again put up LeBron James type numbers in big games in the playoffs. You know, he went head to head with LeBron James and out LeBron James sometimes in that finals against the Lakers. So he is definitely a special player, and I'm really glad, even though I had my reservations at first when he signed with Miami, not gonna lie, because he did carry a lot of baggage of being a unmanageable player, stemming back from Chicago and especially in Minnesota, then in Philadelphia. So he kind of had that baggage with him, but they gave him a chance. He flourished into the type of player that he is now. Hopefully, he'll continue to, you know, be that player that he is, rest that knee in the off season, come back better than ever. Hopefully, he'll have a consistent second voice to help him out. I don't know what's going to happen with players like Kyle Lowry, PJ Tucker, Max Strauss, Caleb Martin, even Dwayne Dedman, free agents and whatnot. Are they going to be re signed? Are they going to be hit with the luxury tax? Are they going to try to do a salary dump? Are they trying to go after Embiid or Bradley Beal or any other player that they feel that could help them? I think Miami needs a solid power forward, to be honest, and not necessarily go for like another guard. Like I think the Heat are pretty guard heavy at the moment with players like a Kyle Lowry and Duncan Robinson and Tyler Hero and Caleb and Max. I think they're fine. Like they should go for like a small forward, power forward, maybe another center because they do need that help as well. You know, Dewan Dedman can do only so much. He's been a fantastic backup center. Bama Debayo needs to develop further as well. So I think they do need maybe a nice, consistent other option that could also play power forward as well. Anyway, that's pretty much my thoughts on the Miami Heat. Great season. Um, they tried their best within the circumstances. Hopefully, next season there will be another great season as well. Hopefully, they'll also make it over the hump to win another championship. I've been very fortunate that my favorite teams have always won at least one championships in my lifetime. Like, I was there for the 86 Mets. I was there for the three Miami Heat rings. It doesn't get any better than that. And of course, the Rangers and the NHL, of course. And my favorite local basketball teams in Puerto Rico and the Puerto Rican Basketball League as well have won numerous championships. So I've always been fortunate in that sense, with the exception of being a Mets fan. You get that one championship and then you get teased so many times. And you go through so many ups and downs, and more downs than ups, to be honest. But, hey, that's the price you gotta pay sometimes, my friends. Anyway, thank you for listening to these NBA ramblings. I don't know if I'll talk more about the NBA or sports in general in the future. I might do it every once and again when something big happens or when my team gets eliminated or wins the championship. I'll probably chime in. Anyway, thank you all and adieu.